Before Viking expansion, the straits around southern Scandinavia already forced travelers past rulers who could protect, tax, obstruct, or redirect movement. An Iron Age kingdom was not a modern state with fixed borders, archives, and uniform administration. It was a changing relationship among royal households, regional assemblies, military followings, landholders, dependents, and strategically placed communities. These political structures prepared expansion by concentrating resources that isolated farms or temporary war bands could never command alone. The preparation unfolded along routes, from agricultural interiors toward halls, landing places, fortified corridors, markets, and finally overseas destinations. No single kingdom designed the Viking Age, and different Scandinavian regions reached stronger coordination through separate histories. Even the word kingdom can mislead when archaeology reveals power centers, but withholds the names, boundaries, and succession rules of their rulers. Foreign texts offer occasional royal names, while monumental buildings and valuable deposits reveal authority without supplying complete constitutional maps. The useful question is therefore not when a nation appeared, but which political capacities existed before sustained overseas activity. Those capacities included collecting surplus, mobilizing labor, settling disputes, rewarding followers, maintaining routes, and turning mobile wealth into allegiance. Agricultural production formed the starting point because every hall, fortification, market, and ship crew consumed stored food. Large estates could gather grain, livestock, dairy products, wool, timber, and labor from households bound through ownership, obligation, or dependency. Archaeology records buildings and animal remains more readily than the agreements that directed their output. Later laws cannot simply be projected backward, though they demonstrate how deeply land, kinship, status, and compensation later structured Scandinavian politics. Assemblies offered arenas where free participants could negotiate law and conflict, but surviving descriptions mostly belong to later centuries. Royal authority, therefore, grew beside collective institutions rather than replacing them everywhere at once. A ruler who ignored influential families risked losing cooperation, while generous distribution could transform imported wealth into durable support. The Great Hall made this exchange visible through feasting, seating, ceremony, armed attendance, and controlled access to the host. At Gudme, settlement evidence on Funen indicates an enduring elite center with specialized craft production and far-reaching imports. Nearby Lundeborg served maritime exchange, linking inland authority with a coast accessible to travelers and goods. That paired landscape shows how political power and landing places could reinforce each other centuries before famous Danish kings. Goods arriving at the shore enhanced rulers who could channel them, while protection and predictable gatherings encouraged further traffic. The relationship was never purely peaceful, because the ability to guard merchants could also become the power to demand tribute. Regional centers competed, and success depended upon retaining skilled smiths, shipwrights, retainers, ritual specialists, and productive households. Gold bracteates and elaborate jewelry reveal elite display, yet their imagery cannot identify a uniform royal ideology across Scandinavia. During the 6th century, climatic disruption and political upheaval altered older networks and may have weakened some established centers. New configurations appeared afterward, including the elite environments represented by Vendel and Avalsgärde in central Sweden. Their boat graves required exceptional expenditure, joining maritime imagery with weapons, animals, imported goods, and ceremonial burial. Such funerals advertised household standing, but the buried individuals' exact offices remain beyond secure identification. From these centers, waterways connected fertile districts to the Baltic, North Sea, and river systems leading toward continental markets. Controlling a route did not mean sealing it like a modern frontier. It meant influencing passage, hospitality, tolls, and military response. Southern Jutland was especially important because travelers could cross its land base or navigate around dangerous seas. The Danevirke transformed that geography by defending the narrow approach between the Baltic Zone and the North Sea world. Its construction occurred in phases, and dendrochronology places significant early work in the 8th century. Thousands of labor days had to be organized, supplied, and supervised before earthworks and timber defenses could alter the corridor. That achievement reveals more than fear of attack. It demonstrates authority capable of making communities build at regional scale. The nearby trading settlement at Ribe concentrated crafts and exchange from the early 8th century. Repeated workshop activity there points to organized seasons, specialist knowledge, and commercial expectations extending beyond one ruler's household. Markets created taxable wealth, but they also produced information about prices, coastlines, political conditions, and available partners. Visitors could carry that knowledge onward without belonging permanently to the authority protecting the marketplace. Early kingdoms expanded their reach through such nodes because controlling every farm directly was less practical than commanding strategic connections. Farther east, Helgö had already operated as a major center in the Lake Mälaren region. Objects reaching Helgö from distant networks show the breadth of exchange, although they seldom prove direct journeys by named Scandinavians. In the later 8th century, Birka developed nearby on Björkö as a more concentrated trading settlement. Its growth linked merchants, craftspeople, royal protection, and maritime access within an increasingly organized regional economy. The precise nature of early royal control remains debated because graves, settlement layers, and later texts illuminate different aspects. Nevertheless, a protected market could supply leaders with silver, luxury goods, intelligence, and relationships extending beyond local agriculture. Those benefits rewarded rulers who kept routes usable and disciplined violence near chosen commercial sites. At the same time, kingdoms needed armed followers able to enforce decisions and compete with rivals. Retinues were sustained through food, accommodation, gifts, land access, and expectations of future reward. Portable valuables mattered because a leader could distribute them quickly when service crossed household and regional boundaries. Weapons in graves indicate martial display, but possession alone cannot establish battlefield experience or membership in a permanent royal force. Wetland weapon deposits from earlier centuries reveal organized conflict involving substantial equipment, though their political narratives remain lost. By the late Iron Age, leaders inherited traditions for assembling men, provisioning movement, and celebrating military loyalty. Ships increased the ratios, that's practices, by allowing forces to bypass roads, appear along coasts, and carry wealth home. Kingdoms did not necessarily own every vessel, since wealthy households and local leaders could contribute ships to a coalition. Naval mobilization probably depended upon negotiated obligations whose early forms are difficult to recover from later levy systems. The critical preparation was modular. Crews, hulls, supplies, pilots, and patrons could combine for one venture without creating a national navy. Success overseas then strengthened some sponsors by returning bullion, prestige goods, captives, and reputations for effective leadership. Failure could destroy scarce equipment and followers, making political expansion risky rather than automatic. This feedback helps explain why overseas activity and kingdom building often advance together, without one simply causing the other. Raiding furnished movable resources, while stronger authority could organize larger fleets, defend markets, and demand a share of gains. Commerce offered another path. because rulers benefited when traders chose protected routes and paid for access. Captivity connected both systems, with enslaved people moved as coerced labor, commodities, dependents, or household members under unequal conditions. Political centers consumed the products of distant violence, even when their rulers did not personally lead the capture. Religious authority also supported power, although pre-Christian ritual organization remains incompletely documented and varied by region. Elite sites containing ceremonial deposits suggest that hosting rites could reinforce claims to leadership and shared order. Later royal genealogies often tied dynasties to gods or legendary ancestors, but their literary forms cannot be read as contemporary records. Conversion would eventually provide Christian kings with literacy and new institutions, yet most initial expansion grew from pre-Christian political arrangements. Western observers first recorded northern rulers more clearly when diplomacy and conflict crossed Carolingian interests. Frankish annals named Danish kings in the early 9th century because border wars and negotiations made them relevant to imperial authors. Those accounts are invaluable but geographically selective, illuminating leaders near Francia more sharply than power elsewhere in Scandinavia. Godfred's actions show a Danish ruler capable of campaigning, fortifying, negotiating, and challenging Frankish influence around 800. He appears after Viking raids had begun, so his reign demonstrates developed capacity rather than the original creation of that capacity. Frankish writers judged events through imperial priorities and could not explain every regional alliance behind a Danish king's forces. Political fragmentation after Godfred's death likewise shows that impressive mobilization did not guarantee stable succession. Kingdoms were coalitions repeatedly rebuilt through kinship, assemblies, military support, wealth, and control of strategic places. That instability could stimulate outward ventures when contenders sought resources or opportunities beyond a contested homeland. Could also weaken protection, allowing semi-independent leaders to raid without unified royal direction. Expansion, therefore, emerged from both consolidation and competition, depending upon the region and moment. Nor did overseas settlement always follow a king's plan, since families, merchants, exiles, and war leaders pursued their own interests. Royal power became decisive when it could capture benefits from mobility, regulate key markets, or transform temporary success into lasting tribute. The routes leading outward consequently began far inland among farms obligated to support halls and gatherings. They passed through political centers where surplus became feasts, equipment, and promises of reward. They crossed defended corridors whose walls embodied compulsory labor and organized planning. At ports, craft specialists repaired gear while merchants connected crews to knowledge reaching beyond Scandinavian waters. The final step carried those accumulated capacities abroad, where local resistance, alliances, and opportunities determined what expansion actually became. No archaeological layer can identify the precise council in which a particular voyage received approval. No surviving 8th century Scandinavian archive lists taxes, levies, harbor rules, or the distribution of captured wealth. Yet the combined landscape makes unsupported simplicity impossible. Overseas success rested on institutions deeper than the ship's crew. Iron Age kingdoms prepared expansion most effectively by turning dispersed production into coordinated movement. Their rulers did not eliminate local authority. They recruited it, competed with it, and sometimes lost control of it. Markets and fortifications reveal coordination, while elite graves reveal hierarchy without offering a complete map of government. Foreign annals finally supply royal names, but only where northern politics collided with literate neighbors. The route ends overseas, although its essential energy began with households producing food, cloth, timber, iron, and political obligation. Raids could enrich a contender, trade could strengthen a port, and both could enlarge the authority protecting their return. That cycle helped some kingdoms grow, while succession struggles and regional resistance repeatedly broke others apart. The Viking expansion was consequently neither a spontaneous migration nor a centrally commanded national project. It was the outward expression of political systems skilled enough to mobilize resources, yet flexible and unstable enough to scatter initiative. Behind every distant fleet stood a chain of negotiated power, stretching from worked fields to guarded straits.